I have two pronounced spiritual gifts from the Holy Spirit that I've been mostly hiding from people because so many get upset when I share revelations that flow from these gifts. As far back as early elementary school, I've had a gift of intuitively knowing things that I shouldn't know, quickly learning things that typically take others much longer to figure out and with not as much depth, an ability to make the right call for opportunities, identify the source of problems in my life and others' lives within moments of thinking about it, and identifying seemingly ridiculous paths to solutions that no one has considered and most would laugh at if offered as an option. In 1 Corinthians 12:8, these gifts are called a message of knowledge and a message of wisdom. I just realized they were documented gifts of the Holy Spirit about a month ago. And that's December 2025 for anyone watching this months and years from now. I always knew this understanding and wisdom was not normal. And in the last couple of years, I started saying that my thoughts and ideas were not my own because that felt true. And it seemed like a good way to help people who were bothered by my level of understanding and wisdom compared to their own so they could better cope with that reality. Like, I'm not smarter than you. I just get these ideas from the Holy Spirit. Now that I know that those gifts are mentioned in the Bible, I'm having a difficult time keeping them to myself because I know I wasn't given these gifts for the sole purpose of benefiting me, my family, and the rare person in my life who actually bothers to take my messages to heart. I love these gifts, but they come with isolation. Family members, friends I've known for years, and new acquaintances frequently get upset when I share knowledge and wisdom. So I've wrestled with fear over sharing when something comes to me. I overanalyze about the right timing and tone and how much to share and how to say it just right. And no matter how I package it up, people who I know to be rational and open-minded get upset about what amounts to my opinion. And then they start avoiding me. The funny thing is, I'm very comfortable with being isolated, but my main concern is over how I make people feel. Like, I don't want people to feel bad. They say the truth hurts, and I fear that I've hurt a lot of people, even though I believe the truth, while painful at times, sets us free. Messages I've received lately have been about stewardship and obedience, and I felt a strong conviction to stop worrying about how people will feel or react to me and just share what I'm supposed to share. And Jesus' words in the parable of the talents have recently stood out as a motivating factor for me. The servant with one talent who buried it gave the excuse that he knew his master to be a hard man and he was afraid. When the servant gave the talent back to the master said, "You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming, I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Like, that's heavy. The Bible warns us not to fear over 300 times. The next most frequent command is about not practicing idolatry. There are around 70 mentions of this. The next most frequent commands happen around 20 times, and I can't remember which one it is. But if you don't know, fear is idolatry. An idol is something you place in value above God. And when you do things or don't do things out of fear, you are ignoring God's instructions and promises, essentially saying, "I don't trust you, God." You're trusting fear, worry, or doubt that does not come from God. You are bowing at the altar of a false God. And Jesus highlights the consequences of that decision right before he discusses the final judgment when he comes back. For reference, that's Matthew 25:31 through 46. So I'm making this video and every other one from now on as an act of obedience, because as far as I know, obedience is the only evidence of our love of Christ and the Father, and I love Christ and the Father, so I'm going to stop hiding my talents. I imagine you might be wanting some examples of my gifts, so I'll close with that. When I first met my wife, she used to have daily spells of feeling like she was going to faint, and sometimes she did. I spent the first couple of months afraid to say what I thought she should do to solve it because, according to her, 20 doctors couldn't figure out anything other than adding electrolytes to her water for some limited relief. And I'm a lawyer, not a doctor. Finally, I gathered the courage to tell her that her vegetarian diet was the problem. She hadn't eaten meat in over 30 years, and I asked her to consider trying it because I saw marrying and having kids with someone who could pass out at any moment as a difficult thing for me to sign up for. She was open to it, so we slowly introduced meat into her diet and made sure she was eating more than toast and peanut butter at lunch, and the dizziness and fainting stopped. Now, that was summer of 2020. Now she eats steak, chicken, burgers, real ones, and seafood every night. And there's not one hint of her so-called incurable case of vasovagal syncope. Another example, there was a time when I was studying for the Ohio bar exam. I decided I was not interested in spending 10 to 15 hours a day studying. I didn't even want to study for 5 hours. So I thought for a moment about how I could pass the bar without living in misery for several weeks. And I got the idea to primarily study for the multi-state multiple choice section and give light attention to the essay portions that focus on state-specific laws that in many cases overlap with laws covered in the multi-state portion of the test. People who've taken the bar exam know that's crazy because the multiple choice part is only worth 50% of the points. But it made sense to me because law students love ambiguity and really seem to hate the firmness of one answer being right. So I went with it, even though I couldn't find any examples of others successfully doing the same. And I passed, scoring in the 98th percentile in the country on the multiple choice and maybe in the 30th percentile on the essays. I averaged 3 to 4 hours of studying on days I actually studied. Then I did it again when I took the Texas bar exam. When we found out we were having a boy, I asked God to make our son Aaron Judge 2.0, among other things. And after he was born, I got the idea that my wife needed to eat at least twice as many calories of high quality fuel to produce the milk he needed. She did not like the idea and pointed out that the recommendation is an additional 500 calories. Turns out that recommendation is based on the amount of energy the body burns making milk, so it's unrelated to volume and nutritional density. By the way, I learned that a couple of years later. My wife eventually agreed to follow the plan that just popped in my head, and something supernatural happened. Our son fed for 70 to 90 minutes every night, which kind of sucked for my wife. She couldn't pump enough milk for him to drink, and her breast didn't look full enough to be actually feeding him for that long, so she thought he was struggling to get what he needed. I thought he was getting exactly what he needed, and she should just trust that it's happening. So rather than doing that, my wife called a lactation consultant. The lactation consultant weighed him before and after a feeding and was bewildered by the results. He was drinking milk the whole time, even though my wife's breast looked empty and yielded nothing after using several different pumps. The consultant had never seen anything like that and took her findings to her more experienced colleagues, and they all said they'd never seen anything like it either. They could not explain how it was possible. Now, our son is 3, but is around the height and weight of the average 6-year-old. Now, I forgot to mention my name, but it's Otis Grigsby. I'm a dad of 2 toddlers. I'm a lawyer and a former NFL player, and I really just want to help people see their journey as a parent from a more positive and powerful perspective. Like, subscribe, and turn on alerts if you want more content on deep and uncommon ways of approaching life, particularly as a parent, an athlete, parents of athletes, or followers of Christ. I truly appreciate your time and attention. Thanks.